So while our program ran without errors, it did not do anything. So good start, but more to do. So we'd like to display hello world. This is the classic first thing you have to do in any language you're learning. So we can do this using system.out.println. Let's break this down. First, enter the name of the class is called system. So there's a class, a pre-written class called system. So type that on line 3. Now the system class has a member variable inside of it called out. So a variable is a holder of some data. So inside this class system, we have a variable called out. Next, on that variable called out, it has a member method called println, println for print line. So again, the class is named system. It has a variable called out, and out is actually an instance of an object that has a method called println. That may be a little confusing now, but hold on. The println method can accept arguments, and in this case, we give the argument a string called hello world. And notice at line 3, we also put a semicolon at the end of the line saying this is a single statement. So we're basically saying system.out.println. The end result should be hello world, should appear on the console. Now, when we click on run, we know that when we click on run, it runs the Java compiler, and then it runs Java. And in fact, when we run that, all right, we see hello world. So always one of the first steps, one of the milestones of a language is be able to display hello world on the console. Now we're going to add 3 more lines and click on run. So notice at line 5, type in system.out.println, and the argument inside of here, give it system.in. So this says go to the system class and access the variable called in, and then access the variable called out, and access the variable called error. ERR stands for error. Now when you run this and print it out, notice you get some interesting output. java.io, and this is a package. So the package, think of a package as packaging up many different classes. So in this case, java.io package has a class called buffered input stream. Buffered input stream. So what we find out is in, that variable in, is actually a buffered input stream, which, as you can guess, allows you to get input into your program. The other 2 lines, the java.io print stream, notice that both .out and .error are both of class print string. That is, a stream going out to the console, and print stream provides various methods that can be called. Now when your Java program starts up, it's given input, output, and these error streams. So keep that in mind. You always get the input, the output, and the error streams. And actually, the full name of this system class is java.lang.System. So here again, java.lang is the name of the package, and inside this package it has a number of classes, and the one we're using here is system. Now the reason on our code we didn't have to say java.lang.System in front of the system, by default the Java compiler includes java.lang. So java.lang by default is included inside of there, and so that's why we can leave it off. Sometimes I will type it anyway, just to be very clear that it's coming from the java.lang package. So in this case, java.lang.System.currentTimeMillis. So what this is showing us is that the system class has a method called currentTimeMillis, and anytime you call this, it gives you, guess what, the milliseconds. so the current time in milliseconds. And it displays. This is a quick and easy way to do timing. You can at any time do a check, see the current milliseconds, you can execute some code, and then call it again, and of course subtract the two, and you'll see how many milliseconds your code took. Here's another java.lang.System.nano time. So let's suppose you're wanting to do a higher resolution and you're wanting to actually measure the number of nanoseconds that have gone by. And so usually this is a higher resolution than you need, but it is available. Another good example of calling a method on the system class, in this case system.nano time, and it shows the number of nanoseconds that have passed. Here's another one from java.lang.System. This one's called getEnv. And the interesting one of this one, this system.getEnv, as you see on line 12, it actually returns to us what's called a map. And notice the map comes in another package, java.util. So we've at this point seen really three packages. We've seen java.lang. Here we're seeing java.util. And just a moment ago we saw a package, java.io. So you're getting the idea that classes are put into packages to group them, that they have certain things. So in this case, java.util says, well, there must be a class called map, and it's a utility type class that's used many, many times. And in this case, a map is simply a key and a value, a key and a value. So in this case, we see the map is a string for the key and a string for the value. So what this is doing is saying system.getEnv. It returns a map of all the environment variables. Now, we'll find out that when your program runs, it gets access to all the environment variables on your system. I'll show that in just a moment. But what we do at line number 13, we use a for loop, and we say, go to this environment map and return to us a key set. This key set data structure gives us a set of all the keys that are inside of this map. And we can use that in this for loop to essentially, at line 14, using each key in turn, at line 14, we use the get method on the environment map, and it returns the value for the key. In other words, we'll be displaying the key and the value for every single environment variable we have. Now here's some partial results, because actually there's a lot of environment variables on your system. But notice in this case, I show, for example, in the middle, the path. So the path is when you run a program, run a command, this is the search path. Now remember, we're on a Linux system, so that's why you see, for example, /user/local/go/bin. Also, the colon separates each path entry. So we see path is an environment variable. Notice there's another one called Python path. So we see there's another environment variable, Python path. We see yet another environment variable, package config path, and there are many others. This is just partial results. This is a very common technique of passing environment variables into a program. It's one of the ways you can send input into a program. Now, speaking of that, suppose you wanted to get a specific environment variable instead of getting all of them. Well, here we could do java.lang.System.getEnv and give it a string of the one we're looking for. So notice at line 17, if we say system.out.println, and I'm looking up user, I can say system.getEnv of user, and it will return to me whatever value that has. And in this case, it has the value of runner. So when you're running things in this particular environment, your user is literally called runner. Here's one you don't use that often, but it is useful when you need it. That is, if you need to suddenly exit the system for some reason, exit your code, there's the system.exit. And notice you can give it an integer status. So at line 19, just for an example, I do a system.out.print, enter your name. And at line 20, we go to our java.util package again. This time we use a class called the scanner, a pre-written class called the scanner. And notice I do creating a new instance of scanner, so java.util.scanner. And the scanner says use the input from system.in. So system.in, we looked at that earlier, that's our input stream. So we're saying scanner, we want you to scan the input stream. And how we do that at line 21, scanner.next pulls in the next string from that scanner input. So in this case, you can see on the right side, I say enter your name and I type in Norman. When I do that, the scanner reads that at line 21, and then at line 22, we do a system.exit. And just for demonstration, I pass 42. So passing in 42, and notice on Linux, what you can do is say echo $? And what that will do is show you the results from the previous command you ran. Well, we know here the previous command we ran was java space main. The Java virtual machine ran our program, and we see when we ask the Linux shell echo $? To tell us what was the results of running that program, we see it was 42. And you can imagine there are many times where you write programs that call other programs, and you want to look at the output of whether it was success or failure, and this is a way you can do that by sending the integer status from this system.exit.